In Nigeria, the concepts of human rights, press freedom, and media freedom are increasingly contentious, reflecting deep-rooted issues within the country's democratic framework. Now, the Nigerian constitution guarantees fundamental human rights, yet violations are said to persist. We are talking about reports from organizations like Amnesty International that actually highlighted unlawful attacks, arbitrary detentions, and other forms of vices that we've seen play out. I'm talking about torture, detentions, particularly against journalists and activists who actually challenge government narratives. Now, during the 2023 general elections, nearly several of journalists were said to have been attacked, highlighting the dangerous environment for media practitioners during politically sensitive periods. So, despite constitutional protections, press freedom in Nigeria is perceived to be severely compromised, including human rights. So this evening, Jide Johnson, the public affairs analyst, joins me to unpack this. Thank you so much, Jide Johnson, for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you, and good day to our viewers all over the world.
You're welcome. So for you, how genuine is the government's commitment towards press freedom?
Well, government commitment towards press freedom can only be actualized where the fundamental principle that guarantees press freedom are observed by government. When I talk about government, I'm talking about the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. You know, central to the enforcement of this fundamental human right is the role that the judiciary plays in ensuring that there are checks and balances from attempt by the executive or the legislature to subvert the freedom of the press under the guise of authority in terms of the executive and under the guise of silencing the opposition in terms of the legislature. So the true reflection of press freedom is determined by the ability of those that are in authority to ensure that they comply with the Constitution. Don't forget, every Constitution makes, which is the grand norm that explain the various institutions within the state, their powers, their role, the limitations on these various agencies of government. So if these norms are not followed, then you have the challenges of press freedom being trampled upon. You know, fundamentally, we say the Constitution is supreme, which guarantees the right of everybody. Observance of rule of law, equality before the law, and fundamental human right are the grand norms of what we call the rule of law and what would guarantee press freedom as provided for in the Constitution.
Okay, so we're going to look at the issue around the supremacy of law in Nigeria. But then there is a breaking news that we need to bring to the attention of our viewers. Now, at the appeal court in Nigeria, that is the appeal court in Abuja, has set aside all orders restraining the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Accountants General of the Federation from releasing funds to the Rivers State government. The three-member panel presided by Justice Aman Baraka held that the subject matter was not within the jurisdiction of the courts relating to the revenue of the state. While allowing the appeal of the Rivers State government, the appellate court also set aside all orders by Justice Joyce Abdulmalik, stating that it was unconstitutional for her to take or make orders restricting Rivers State governments to receive funds due to the state from its consolidated revenue fund. The appellate court held that the lower court overreached itself and didn't have the jurisdiction to entertain the matter. So invariably, the appeal court in Abuja has actually nullified the Federal High Court's judgment seeking to seize Rivers State's allocation and revenue. And of course, that is what is trending right now. We just need to bring that to the attention of our viewers. And that is part of what we are talking about. So we're talking about the rights, not only of, in this case, people, but of governments, determinant by what the Constitution says. So you were talking about the supremacy of law here, and there are also talks about the interpretation of law. So how independent is the judiciary system in the country when it comes to upholding the rights of people.
Now, we are talking about the right of states because I would like to provide a linkage with this breaking news, so which becomes a developing story that we begin to talk about. You see the appeal court ruling that was an overreach. What happens to that High Court judge? What was the role of the Attorney General of the Federation in this? What was the role of the Accountant General of the Federation in this? What was the role of the executive, as symbolizes by the presidency, in this, in seizing what rightfully belongs to a local government, which is their fundamental economic right of the citizen of the various local government in Rivers. And then why Rivers State? Why not other states? Was it only Rivers State that conducted the election? You could see this landmark judgment touches on every aspect, the conduct of the election. Even the opening remark by the Attorney General in that conference which he attended, which talks about they do not even have right to talk about how local government elections are conducted, which is within the purview of the state. It tells you that fundamentally we have some structural problem in terms of adherence and enforcement of the rights of the citizen. And you recall that I said the judiciary has a critical role to play. Look at, if this case had ended at the High Court level, where you have just one judge, but at the appeal court level, you must have a minimum of 3 judges and a maximum of 7 judges to look into the matter, and the 3 of them rule extensively. Now, if it's an individual, does he have the resources to take it up to the appeal court? That means that justice will have been delayed, justice will have been denied, and rights will have been trampled upon, and a lot of people have lost their life as a result of foot dragging of the judicial process when it comes to enforcement of the fundamental human rights of the citizenry.
So how do we now deal with these structural problems?
For example, the particular judge that gave this judgment ought to be sanctioned by the National Judicial Council, because it was established by the pronouncement of the appeal court that there was an overreach, that it does not even fall within the purview of his jurisdiction for him to have made that pronouncement concerning that. Now, if it's that of an individual, and that's why, if that's an individual, will he have the resources to pursue it up to the Supreme Court? And I think that there's this saying that the last hope of the common man is the judiciary, because the judiciary is the interpreter of the Constitution, is the arbiter when there is a conflict between the state and states, between individual and the state. That's where the judiciary comes in to ensure that, no, this is what the Constitution says concerning this matter, this is what the Constitution says concerning this matter, this is where your roles and responsibility extend to, this is where your own role and responsibility stops by. So, and that's why a lot of people are looking forward to the judiciary with respect to them ensuring that press freedom is guaranteed. Not only press freedom, the fundamental human rights of every citizen is guaranteed. And it's unfortunate, I must quickly add this, it's unfortunate that those that are in position of authority today, whether in the legislature, whether in the executive, and whether in the judiciary, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, were champions of what they are now perpetuating, champions against what they are now perpetuating. If anybody had told you that the president that fought as a governor of a state will be a president whose administration will withhold the local government fund of another state, you say, no, that's not possible. So it's important for everybody to learn a lesson from what we are witnessing now.
But this current administration has oftentimes come out to assert to upholding the rule of law and to granting freedom to citizens, freedom of expression, so to speak. So are you saying it reeks of hypocrisy on the part of this administration?
Now, let me give you a classic example. You remember the last protest, until these children were brought, people that went to protest, they were arrested for what? And charged for terrorism and terrorism and what's this other charge that was brought against them, and treason. A lot of treason. And then a lot of children were arrested until they were brought to court, which the eyes of everybody opened to it. Can you believe that somebody can be arrested for protesting against government for treason and felony in Nigeria? If someone had told you 20 years ago, will you believe that? If someone had told you 25 years ago that will happen, that can happen or will happen in this country. And I've said it. It's important because the media has a critical role to play in this. Now, if they come for them and you think you are safe, they will come for you tomorrow. if you don't speak out.
But the excuse that was given was that they flown the Russian flag during the course of protesting.
No, that's not even, that's generally speaking
Yes.
about the, you see, the beauty of democracy is that majority will have their way, minority will have their say. And one of the fundamental cardinal principle of freedom, the fundamental human right, the Universal Declaration on Human Rights is freedom of association, freedom of expression, freedom of lawful assembly. All of that are guaranteed by the Constitution. However, you see, the administrative state, when I talk about the administrative state, you are talking about institutions of the state who are not elected officials of the state, who are responsible to the elected officials of the state, using the instrumentality of the codes, either the criminal code or the civil code or whatever code, to looking at the loopholes and using that to engage in an overreach. Like the judge which was spoken about, the judge of that Abuja High Court, it was an overreach. Let's put it in perspective. Should an Abuja High Court be given a judgment concerning Rivers State local government? Is Rivers State local government under the purview of Abuja High Court? These are some of the things. That's why people have called for it. These are some of the things that we need to address. Like one of the fundamental issue that is a germane issue that we talked about, that is being spoken about, is the issue between Chief Afe Babalola vis-a-vis Dele Farotimi, the Nigerian legal judicial system, and what have that publication. Should that matter have been taken to Ekiti State and whatever? So these are some of the overreach that a lot of people have asked, have said that, well, to a large extent, freedom of expression is being stifled.
Okay, so now that we are saying in democracy that these arms of governments are meant to form checks and balances for each other where there is impunity or excessiveness or high-handedness, and we don't see that playing out, what can be done in such a situation?
Well, what can be done is that there is a high moral ground that is placed on the media. The media, you know, Section 22 of 1999 Constitution has amended, makes an exclusive provision that the media shall be the watchdog of the society. There's a second path, and shall hold government accountable. It is our responsibility to throw spotlight to all of these issues. Now look at what we have done in Politics HQ today. Highlighting this issue, and there was a breaking news, and that we provided a linkage between that issue and fundamental human right, and establishing that. And that's one of the major things we need to do, throwing the spotlight and on this particular issue, bringing this issue into the front burner of public conversation. And when you bring it to the front burner of public conversation, you put it in the public sphere, and you know whether you like it or not, government survive based on public opinion.
But it seems as though even the media itself in the country and journalists are, so to speak, being witch-hunted for doing their duties.
One of the unfortunate damage that happened to the media industry is the capture of that industry. Until 1999, you never had media professionals being active participant in a democratic process. Now, if you look from 1999 to date, and you look at those that we look up to while we are growing up, and those that are our contemporaries while we are grown up, majority of them have participated either at the local government, at the state government, or at the federal level, to the point that if you look at the composition of the information management of the presidency, you see that the people that are involved are some of the people that have participated in the process. So there is a capture of this particular, of our industry, which is critical to the survival of democracy, which is critical to the enforcement of the fundamental human rights of the citizenry. And then if you look at the ownership structure, if you go and study the ownership structure of the media, you discover that the media was not, most media organizations are established to propagate the political goal or aspirations of their owners. So he who pays the piper dictate the tunes, and there's a need for us to have a redirection of what should be the role of the media vis-a-vis their responsibility in the society. And that's...
It's quite interesting that you say this, because we know that we have regulators, we have the NBC, we have those who are meant to deal.
That's another aberration.
Okay, so we are going to come to that, all right. Let's quickly go on a short break on Politics HQ. When we return, we'll look at the regulatory aspect of the media industry vis-a-vis how that can be strengthened to ensure that the media industry is free from any form of interference, and of course they are protected while doing their duty. We'll be back in a bit. This is Politics HQ on News Central Television, and in case you don't know, we have this breaking news, and the appeal court in Abuja has set aside all orders restraining the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Accountant General of the Federation from releasing funds to the River State government. The three-member panel, presided by Justice Ahmad Barka, held that the subject matter was not within the jurisdiction of the court relating to the revenue of the state. So while allowing the appeal of the River State government, the appellate court also set aside all orders by Justice Joyce Abdulmalik, stating that it was unconstitutional for her to make orders restricting River State's governments to receive funds due to the state from its consolidated revenue fund. Now, the appellate court held that the lower court overreached itself and didn't have the jurisdiction to entertain that matter. And we are tying that all up to the issue around the freedom of the press, the freedom of citizens of the state, including the freedom of states and governments in issues that borders on their well-being and their rights. And I have with me Jide Johnson, who is a public affairs analyst, and we are actually putting all these together to have an understanding of what needs to be done to make the society better. So let's go back to what we were talking about earlier, Jide, as regards a regulation of not only the media industry, but everything that has to do with their operations and ensuring that they are protected. We have the NBC and other regulatory bodies. Why are they not functioning as one would have expected?
Well, for me, the NBC is an aberration. I believe that an agency of government should only be concerned with licensing and not regulating. The ultimate regulator of the media space are the audience. And whether you like it or not, it comes from your rating. It's just that we have not developed media space to that level in which programs are rated by the audience and which determines which advertisers come to advertise their products on your various platforms. If you look at the NBC and in terms of its approach, it is still subject to the whims and the caprices of the head of that NBC, how excessive he wants to be in terms of an overreach, or how accommodating is he in allowing the professional to self-regulate. Because in this particular industry, like I tell people, look, we have enough laws within the framework of our constitution and within the framework of the legal framework that we have, either civil or criminal courts in this country, that anybody that runs foul of anything can be prosecuted. For example, if you defame somebody of libel, sedition, and the rest of that, can take care of that. You don't even need a panel of experts to determine whether this particular information is an overreach. It's not an overreach. An individual feel aggrieved, you should approach the court. If the judiciary is there to make interpretation concerning it, not an executive body that is put in place, an administrative state to control. For example, one of the anomalies that I see on Nigerian media is somebody saying, okay, all the opinions expressed is not the opinion. Do you ever see it in other information channel, with the exception of Nigeria? Whoever, as I'm on this show, I'm expressing my own personal opinion. Mm-hmm. If I commit an infraction, I'm liable to whatever I say on here. It's captured, it can be used against me. It's not the view of the station. The station does not need to provide that at the end of the station, which makes it even more unprofessional. So as far as I'm concerned, the structure and the establishment of NBC is even antithetical to the values of spirit of federalism, in the sense that you have a central body controlling media regulations throughout the federating units of the nation. And then even if you look at it, should it be the government that should appoint people into NBC? I believe, this is my strong belief, even if you are going to have NBC, it should be the various professional bodies in the media industry, in that space, that should elect the board members because they know they are practitioners. We call practitioners people that have practiced over time. They have the expertise, they have the knowledge. So they can regulate, they elect from amongst themselves to serve a particular tenure. And after the expiration of the tenure, you elect other people. So they know, they have the experience, they have the expertise to say, no, what you have gone is an overreach, what you have gone is an overboard. Not somebody that is appointed by the government. He who pays the piper dictates it.
Is that what obtains in other climes? Because we're talking about a government institution.
A friend of mine did something. If you look at the NBC, a friend of mine, the former NUJ chair of Lagos State, Dr. Kazim Akreti, his PhD thesis was on the broadcast regulation in Nigeria and Ghana. It was a comparative analysis. And then you look at the regulatory body in Ghana. The regulatory body in Ghana are elected by the professionals. I've asked people to, I've said it over time, go and study the regulatory body in Ghana and compare that with that of Nigeria. That of Nigeria, don't forget that it was something we inherited from the military administration. And don't forget military administration, it was a decree. And it was a decree that was converted to an act of the parliament by virtue of every decree that came in place before 1999 constitution became an extension of the 1999, become part and parcel of the 1999 constitution. So essentially, is there a need for a review? Now, if, for example, you pick heads of broadcast station across board in Nigeria to head it, now it's professionals that are headed, not someone that is appointed by the presidency because he's a member of a political party. What do you think he will do? He will definitely protect whatever interest that gets him that appointment. And I think that that's an area that we need to look at in terms of having a review and having some major professionalism when it comes to broadcasting in Nigeria.
Okay, but then, of course, just like you said, we have professional bodies, but it seems as though they are not really optimal when it comes to the protection of their own members in cases whereby they're being harassed and the upholding of the fundamental human rights of these personnel when they go about their duties. Or probably you would beg to differ.
Yeah, because he's one man for himself. That's the principle that operates within this industry. The industry is like dog eat dogs. If it doesn't concern me if it doesn't happen to me. But there's power in collective effort. For example, it's important for everybody operating within this space. How easy is it for anybody operating in this space to survive with the economics of broadcasting, with what is required to be on air 24/7, considering which is an economic right in any case. Your survival right is an economic right. So these are issues that needed attention and must be looked into holistically by all the stakeholders within this particular industry. If something should happen to my station and it doesn't happen to your station, I'm less concerned. But what happens to one happens to all. That's it.
And it's quite interesting that we have a National Human Rights Commission in the country, but then it seems as though they are not also functional as one would have expected in terms of protecting the rights of citizens and maybe journalists when it comes to carrying out their duties or expressing their opinion. Maybe we'll get there someday, sometime. Only time will tell, but a lot needs to be done in that light. Thank you so much, Jide Johnson, public affairs analyst. It was nice talking to you on Politics HQ.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me. Have a wonderful weekend.